Hi, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, and this video is going to go through a Q&A of how to charge for your CNC projects. I put a video out not too long ago asking for questions from you, and I got a lot of them. So I am actually going to walk through these questions and give you some answers. So if you put a question out there, you're probably going to get named. If you are new to this video and this channel, you may want to subscribe because I teach entrepreneurialism for CNCers. If you want to make money with a CNC machine, then you probably want to be here. And if you're brand new to CNC machines, then I teach that too. CNC for beginners. Anyways, we are going to dive right into these questions of how to charge for CNC projects. The good thing about having questions is it really gives me the ability to focus in on what you are looking for. So don't be afraid to ask questions down below. All right, so let's go along with the first one. Patrick. Hey, Patrick, how you doing? So Patrick said, what are all the individual factors to take into consideration when it comes to setting price? For example, design time, mock-up, trial, experimentation, material cost, utility cost, machine maintenance, cutting time, finishing, profit margin. How do you determine all of this? Well, for you as a beginner getting into this, my answer to you is, by the way, Patrick, I know that you've been in this for a little while, so you've got some experience on all this stuff. As the beginner, don't worry about the utility cost and the cost of the machine. What you want to worry about is the cost of the materials and the time that you're putting into the job and the dollar value that you are allocating as a part of your skill. Now, when I say that, don't put yourself at a $10 an hour level. You can go work at a convenience store for that. You have a talent and a skill. And so you want to be able to charge for that. Now we're going to dive into that as we go through these questions to help you better understand that kind of thing. When you allocate though, whatever your material cost is, you want to double that material cost. Whatever your design rate is that you have set up for yourself, you want to put that in there as the hourly rate. So if $20, $40 an hour. I still think $20 is a little low. Now, in the beginning, if you're learning, then that's just part of the process of becoming good at what you're doing, so you can charge higher and higher dollars to a higher and higher money demographic. Your machine time, typically you want to allocate a dollar figure per hour on your machine. $20 an hour, $30 an hour, depending on the level of demographic that you're serving. If you're just selling to individuals or if you're selling to a business. Now, we're going to talk about the individuals a lot more than business, but we will get into business in a little bit. But you always want to have a profit margin tied in. Now, the other thing you always want to do is have a little bit of a learning time in that. You can't charge for learning, right? That's your skill building time to get better, to make yourself worth more. But don't make projects if you're not going to get a profit out of it. That's one of the biggest mistakes early on CNCers make, is they undervalue or underestimate their own talent and the time that it's going to take to get into doing this stuff. So just realize in the beginning, you've got a lot of a learning curve to do in order to get up to a point where you can charge high dollars. Let's move on to John. John is interested in my thoughts on pricing for cutting someone else's work for them. For example, cutting out small items in batches for someone who will finish them for themselves. Okay, so this is a good one. You still have your hourly rate and your machine time. If they supply you the material, you can take the material cost out of it. You still have setup time, so you want to take that into account. And if you are not doing the finish work, that's good, right? You're just doing the design if you are doing the core of the design stuff for them and just running the stuff out for them. Now, when it comes to design work, if they already have a design concept and have given you all the basic elements of the design, that makes it really easy for you. You just plug it into your design software, get everything in the right position, and then go for it. However, if you are doing the design work for them, then you have to get that design hourly time into it. No matter what kind of time you spend in your design software, that hourly rate should be in there. And the reason I say hourly rate, you want to assign yourself a value for the talent that you're building or that you have already, and stick by that. We're going to cover more of this in these questions. Pamela, yeah, hi Pamela. So she's just starting, so she doesn't even know where to start. So her question is, how much do you consider design time, customer design changes on custom work, and how much for pre-made stuff, and what should be the difference? So pre-made stuff is, you've already punched it out, right? You know what kind of time it takes, so you can bring your price down a little bit on it. You don't have the design time, so you don't have to wrap that in so much per project. However, you don't want to undercut yourself either. Always, material. Double your cost to the material. Now, she's got some good points here. How much do you consider design time? Well, that is something you're going to have to feel out. What about customer design changes? Okay, so that's a good one. When it comes to design changes, that's going to be a gimme when it comes to custom projects. Almost always, you're going to come up with a design, and then you're going to take an image of it, and you're going to send it off to them, and they might have a couple of changes on it. However, you want to be able to have some boundaries with this. If you've got a customer that's a literal pain in the ass, they want this change, they want that change, and you're doing 5 and 6 revisions, you're going to have to step back, make touch base with them, and say, okay, we are now getting into an area of a lot of little things, and this is cutting into my ability to make money on this. And so let's come up with some things, because if I keep doing these changes, I'm going to have to up the dollar value. If you approach it right in a way that they understand that time is money, then they will understand, and you end up with you negotiate that from there. So you want to have a limit on design changes. Now, with that, you have a dollar agreement with them up front. So in that agreement, you kind of want to state, okay, so I can do these many changes to your project. And we will try to get this to where we want to be. You can be a nice guy or a nice girl, but don't be overly giving of yourself where it's costing you money as opposed to making you money. I hope that answered your questions. We're going to get more into the custom jobs, things like that. Now, Charlie, he said, right now I am making things and giving them to people for free. He's at the amateur level while he's learning techniques and skills. So that's okay. If he's just doing this for friends and they're little simple things on the learning curve, that's fine. You know, you're figuring this stuff out. You want to be a little careful, though, with friends and family when you're doing this, because you don't want to set up the expectation that later down the road, they're going to expect you to deliver stuff for free, because now you've got a talent, and especially if they want customized jobs. When it comes to that, just don't be afraid to say, okay, well, this is it's going to be $75. You know, because when you set up that expectation up front, and then they're coming back, and then you give them a price, they're going to be kind of sticker shocked and may back away. So just want to be really careful about that. Keep your projects, your learning projects that you're giving away, really small, simple stuff that doesn't have a lot of talent built into them if you plan on making things to make money. Now, one of the things he said is a big, huge point. He said he thinks reputation is going to be the key to making money. Absolutely. This is something I want you to understand in business. You can make money on your first project, but the big money is in the repeat customer. So you can go above and beyond with your customer in the beginning by delivering a lot of value to them right up front. They are likely to become a repeat customer. And if you keep that relationship going. So let's just run through a scenario, a podcast that I'll put a link down to this podcast. My Canadian business buddy, Bill Keays, he actually had a project that falls right in line with this kind of thing. Now, Bill Keays, just so you know, he's in Canada, and we teamed up to sell CNC router bits as a pack. So he could serve Canada, I could serve the United States. But he's a seasoned CNCer. But let's get around the reputation thing. Now, if you get a good reputation with the customer up front, then they are going to want to come back with you. And that all steps into the area of, as they are coming up with a project concept and you are helping them with that, right? You're building a relationship. Now, let's use this example that Bill did in this podcast where this woman wanted a frame. She saw a picture on Etsy, took a screenshot of it, sent it to Bill, and her personal value is to buy local. And could it be customized? And so Bill said, well, yeah, I can do this to this degree, but he had to draw a line because it got to a point where he wasn't going to make any profit off of it. But what he did was start to engage with the customer into the emotional value of the project. And then he started to amp it up by giving ideas, helping her form a better picture in her mind of the project. And by the time everything was said and done, she got something that was far beyond the initial idea of what she wanted. So Bill added a lot of emotional value to this. Furthermore, the project was a gift for someone else. And I want you to understand something here. I talk about this a lot, so I want you to just try to absorb what I'm going to say. This is a customized project, very personalized for a third party. And the person who's buying the project from Bill wants to give something to the third party to feel good, to remember something that has a lot of personal value to them. However, the customer is the ultimate person who's getting satisfied out of this project. Meaning, the recipient is going to get a meaningful gift, but it's the mental and emotional passion and effort that was put in by the customer to build up this idea of what it is and bring it to fruition and then give it to their friend as a gift. They're the one that is getting the ultimate reward. And they're the one that you're working with. So if you can work inside of their end vision of this project, then, and you actually create it for them and bring it to them as they finally got it pictured in their mind, they're going to say, oh my God, this is so much better than I ever thought, because they are still living in the original thought of the concept. So I hope you get that. That's a very deep relationship building and ultra important, and that's going to build your reputation. The repeat customer is where the money is at. He also said, I don't want to spend all day prepping and finishing work on a single item that only sells for $40 or $50. No, you don't. Unless you know that this project is going to, in some way, be able to be a repeat project. Now, let's just use a simple example of a cutting board. So if you worked all day on a cutting board to build up the design and the shape of the cutting board, and you put some engraving on it or something like that, that upfront cost, you may eat that. However, if you're going to get into cutting boards business, now you've got a baseline to work from, an existing design that really just needs a little bit of tweaking on the inside of it, in the personalization. Personalization is everything. I want to discuss this right now. You can buy from Walmart, you can buy from Amazon, you can buy from Etsy. pretty much cookie cutter stuff, and it doesn't have a lot of value to it. It's all in the personalization, and that's what makes you very unique and special, is you have the ability to put personalization into stuff, and personalization is meaningful to your customer. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a future question in this video, so stick around. You don't want to miss that. And by the way, if this is helpful, give me a thumbs up. And I want to let you know that I am going to start doing webinars to address questions directly so I can get engagement with people, and we can have lots of people in there. If you like that idea, please put a comment down below. Yes, webinars. All right, so let's get on to the next one. Donald W. Do you just stay with cash sales or go with tax ID and keep everything on the up and up? He's talking about collecting tax, having liability insurance. When you're getting into it as a business, at that point, you don't, let's step back. You don't want to build a legitimate business until you've got some foundation of where you know your market is at and you're working in your market niche. You have to come up with a niche product. If you're like most CNCers, we get all these ideas, we want to make it all, right? And we're all over the place. And that prevents us from honing in on a profitable product. Unfortunately, us ADHDers as CNCers have a hard time doing that because we're creators. We've got imaginations that go everywhere. We come up with these beautiful ideas and we want to make it all. So you're gonna have to learn to rein yourself in. In the beginning, you want to work on finding that niche. That's one of the things I coach on in this as I'm being a teacher, is we'll coach you into building your business, finding your niche, particularly a niche that you're passionate about serving, so that you're happy and your CNC work isn't a job, but it's more of a passion. You're doing what you love. I will put a Calendly link down below if you want to set up some kind of coaching session to help you get your business up and going and to find a niche. And yeah, so it's down below. So what I would say to this as far as a business, first of all, like I said, don't build a legitimate business until you got some clarity on the business. Don't worry about collecting tax. Go with cash. And because when you have a business, your whole pricing structure changes. And now you got to start to take into account other things. You got to take into account taxes and some of the other overhead that you've now absorbed by starting an LLC. Hunter says, how do I know what to sell that will make the best money? Hunter, we are going to dive into that one in just a little bit. Well, I think we'll just dive into that right now. No, we're going to dive into it with Rob's question. So Rob has been in the CNC market, and I like this. This is something that you want to listen to, because Rob really nailed it on the head. He didn't really ask a question so much as gave a little clarity that I'm going to pass on to you. So thank you, Rob. So he says he used to make a lot of cutting boards, edge grain, end grain, 3D effect. Where he lived, no matter what kind he made or what size or how much time, he can only get about 30 to 40 bucks out of it. And that's all he could get locally. So the regional does have stuff to do with it. He said he took those same cutting boards and went a couple hours away to a high-end craft show and was able to get $80 to $100 out of those boards. So you want to think about the market that you are going after. It's one of the questions later on talks about the Hobby Lobby effect. The standard craft shows are standard people, right? And they have a certain money mindset that they're more into, let me make sure I get the deals, the sales. Whereas when you get to a higher end demographic, such as the high-end craft shows, people aren't there worrying about sales. They want to find the things that express the things that are meaningful to them, and they're willing to pay for it. So when you feel a little squeamish about stepping into these higher demographics, the thing I want to say to you is just go. In order for you to get comfortable with charging higher prices, you have to step out of your comfort zones and into these places. You will get used to it. Just by going to a different demographic, still a craft show, he was able to increase his price by 300%. So think about the demographic you want to reach. The demographic that he went to, the buyer appreciates the work that's going into it and the design and the artisanship that you have. You have to understand you have a talent, or you're building a talent. You have a piece of equipment that just creates it, but you're the one that actually created that whatever the end result is. So it came from this imagination, and you have the equipment to do it. They don't. And that's what makes you a little unique. So this talent thing is a big deal. You've got to keep that in mind. Now, Rob pointed out another thing, shipping costs. If you're going to start shipping stuff, you have to wrap shipping into it. You have to. And don't just charge for the shipping cost, because you've got time to package it. You've got time to deliver it to the shipping company, the post office or UPS, whatever it is, and the materials to package it up with. So that's part of your shipping cost, and then a little profit margin on top of that. Rob, thank you for that input. That was excellent. I would not have thought of that. Jerry C. He said he'd been doing a lot of work for customers that seems like it takes forever, and the same questions come up most every time. How long will this take? What's the material cost? How long will the project run? Is it a short run, or is it just a one-off? What to charge for shop rate, custom work, and production work? All right, let's talk about, design work. All right, so let's talk about production work. Production work, you have the design done, right? You don't have any more design time in it. You know the material cost, you know how long it's going to run. You've started to work on optimizing your run time and process time to do the finish work. So you can actually set a baseline on that. The industry standard is 2.5 times what it costs you. So once you get those numbers worked out, 2.5 times. Now, if the market is not willing to pay that 2.5 times, you're probably in the wrong market, or you don't have it niche enough in that market to make people want it. Patrick is a great example, the very first guy who asked the question. He found a kind of a broad market that sells a lot of product. And he found a little angle in there where people aren't making things in that niche. And so he started making them, and he could not keep up with production. So if you can find a product, then find that angle. And then you've got a fresh angle, you're niched in a niche, you're a one of a kind, and that's what makes people come to you. Now, in production work, you don't want to overproduce right up front without knowing that you're going to have the sales, because you can spend a lot of time doing something and a lot of money that's not going to pay off. I did that. I mean, most of us do that at some point. And this video and this Q&A, the whole thing is meant to reel you in so that you don't make that mistake up front and think that you have this amazing idea and the market's going to buy it. You want to just try it out, and the market will tell you if they want it. So he said the custom versus production work. Custom work, you have to really take into account the custom stuff. Now, when it comes to custom work, you want to get an idea of the customer's budget right up front. If they are not willing to pay for the idea that they want, then you know their limit, you can work with them. I wouldn't necessarily say, I can't do this, if you can do it and still make a profit. But you're going to have to tell them, I can't do what you want for that amount of money. And if they wonder why, you go into explain. There's design time. Don't be afraid to explain to them what all is involved in coming up with this craft. I'm going to talk about this one in a little bit too. So, and what about prototype work? So that was Jerry. The prototype work is a good one. So Jerry, I'm assuming prototype you mean for like businesses. Prototype work you can make a lot of money off of. You are stepping into a different type of CNC business when you're starting to do prototypes. You're not dealing with a person who's making a paycheck. You're dealing with a business who is developing something. And when companies are in the prototype stage, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, and they know they're going to have to spend money to get to this end game that they are trying to. So when it comes to prototyping, again, it depends on what kind of stuff you're getting. I think I forgot to answer this earlier. If they have the design, then all you're doing is working with the design and modifying it, making it work on the machine so that they can have that prototype. However, they are coming to you because you have a skill and an ability to create that prototype. So you want to charge for that prototype. When it comes to business, don't be afraid to go to 3 or 4 times the cost, because there's going to be back and forth in prototyping. And you're dealing with people at a different level who have much tighter, what do I want to say, requirements in what you are delivering. So this is getting into kind of a professional level thing that you view yourself as a professional. This is your hourly rate is going to go up by default when you do this. So Jerry, I hope that answered your question, and I hope that this kind of, you understand there's 2 different markets out there. There's actually 3. There's your retailer. That's when the people that go to the store and go to the craft stores. There's your commercial. That's the small business like restaurants and things like that. And then you get into industry, business and prototyping. The higher each level is a different price structure. So ideally, get into the business level where you're building relationships with business, because that's where the real money is at. And you can be very lucrative with that. As far as prototyping, if it's a one-off prototype, $100 an hour, right off the get-go, for your design time. Yeah, just put it up there. All right, Windridge Woodcrafts. So he had ideas in this thing. He wasn't really asking questions. So he's helping me out, like Rob was, and providing some answers. He said one of the things he's been playing with lately is different levels of the same product to accommodate different price points, say from $50 to $100. For instance, he's working on wooden hand planes the last couple of weeks. Now, first of all, I want to let you know he's actually building those hand planers that shave off of wood, but they're handmade, they're custom, and this he's at that level of very niche-y and using a talent to make a tool that he understands very well, and he knows the demographic he's working in. So he has like 3 different sizes. He's comparable to, let's see, I think Stanley 2 and 3 and 4 equivalents. So his product is comparable to the professional tools that are out there that you can buy in the store, like Stanley. His last variation, okay, so different types of materials that they're made from, the different sizes. So he's getting into an artsy aspect of it. What kind of wood do you want? Right? He's customizing a pretty standard type of tool that's been around for a very long time. So through that experimenting, he's building a product that's for the craftsman, someone who is well entrenched in their woodwork. So he's building a really high quality product to their specs, right? Or to their desires. They appreciate craftsmanship and they're willing to pay for the craftsmanship. And he's adding more twists to it. So basically what he's saying is, be willing to find something that you can work with to build up at different levels. Maybe flags, right? We'll talk about flags in a minute. But if you have a flag you make that's this big, that's personalized, relative to a flag that's made this big, it's two different price points, and you're reaching two different demographics or three different demographics. When I say demographics, how much money people are willing to pay. All right, Madison Creations, Madison. I am always, sorry for slaughtering the name, I am always interested in ways to make money with a CNC machine. A challenge we often see, as many people do, is the Hobby Lobby effect. Okay, so I was touched on this briefly before. You're dealing with somebody who is expecting a $20 deal. You're dealing with a demographic that is in the sale mentality. Where can I find the sales? This goes back to your talent and your craft and the money you've spent on a machine and the time you've spent to learn to become a craftsman or craftswoman. Stay away from the Hobby Lobby people. You know, if they can't appreciate that there's talent in there and what you're creating is something special, then you don't want to deal with them. Now, this also leads into another point. You don't want to create cookie cutter products that you can buy at Walmart or at Hobby Lobby. That's pointless. The whole thing about your craft as a CNCer is that you have the power to be very creative and build things that are ultra personalized to people, where they have the imagination of something and you can form that and make it real for them. That's where you want to put your attention to. If you want to get into production work, that steps back to what Patrick does. Find the niche and then find the angle that nobody else is doing. And then you'll be okay. But you'll always want to test that market first before you make a whole bunch of things. You can't, he said, how can one compete with these places? You can't. You just can't. Don't try. You have a talent and a specialty. Work with that. Greg, let's see. Okay, I like this one. And I want you to embrace this whole thing. Now, Greg just told a story. He's already been into CNC work for a while. And he's been to craft shows where people remark that the products that he was selling aren't handcrafted because they're made on a machine. So Greg stopped the customer and said, "You are into sewing, right?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "So you use the sewing machine, right?" And she said, "Of course." And he said, "Well, then you don't sew because you use a machine." So then they got into the dialogue and the understanding that it's not the machine that creates the value. It's the ability that you have to utilize the machine to create the amazing product, the end point. So that's like, sometimes people just don't see quite through this whole thing. So there's another question here about that, is how do you explain to people? And let's find that question. I guess we'll get to that one. Unsuccessful bank robber asked that question. How do you make people realize that an expensive CNC product is worth their money? You can't make them realize. They have to have an intrinsic sense of value within them first. Now, you can fall into a dialogue with Greg. One of the ways, there is a way around this one. One of the ways you can do that is to use psychology in your marketing. This is fundamental, like deep stuff that most marketers don't share. When you're engaging with a potential customer, and they say, "I want that, how much is it?" The worst thing you can do is say, "Oh, $40. It's the worst thing you can do. You want to redirect the entire conversation into what is in it for them. What's the value and the emotional lift that they're going to get out of the end result? You want to take them on a journey by asking questions about why they're interested in your product and what they're seeing in their mind, and to the end point or the result of what they want. Now, what comes to mind right now is my logo. This has a lot of value to me because it's a representative of what I stand for in my business and teaching you how to sell your stuff. And by the way, if you want to make money with your CNC machine, join the CNC Entrepreneurs Facebook group. That's why I developed it. The mission is to help you make money with your CNC machine. There's a link down below to join that group. All right, so this sign has a lot of value to me because I am so passionate about teaching you CNC stuff. I love CNC, right? That's why I was spending 45 minutes talking about all these questions and answers, and because I just said that, I just lost total train of thought. You want to take the customer on the journey to the end game. So if I was coming to you to make me a sign like this, you're going to start asking me questions. What do you want the sign for? You know, and I'm going to kind of give you an idea. I got this business, and I want people to see it on my wall while I'm shooting videos. And so what does that sign represent to you? And so we're going to dive into this. You're going to start asking about my business, why I did it, how do I feel about it, what's the hard part? And you're going to do a lot of acknowledging. But the thing is, you're going to ask the questions. Whoever asks the questions in a dialogue is controlling the sale. If they are asking how much is this, what can you do there, and all you're doing is answering, they're in control. If you're asking the questions, you are driving them down the path of ultimately getting a sale by taking them on the journey, by finishing the story. So now you've got me to a point of picturing this sign in my mind, and we both see it together. So I've got this energy connection with you. And then you get me to a point of, so where is it going to hang on your wall? And what does it look like when you said it's going to be in a video? Where's it going to be? Well, it's going to be hanging over my right shoulder where everybody can see that IDC Woodcraft, where we create making art with a CNC machine. So you've got me living the experience already there. And then you pull me back, right? You make me want it by doing that. I'm not quite sure how I got in that tangent, but I think what I wanted to say was you can't make somebody see the value in it. They have to see the value in it themselves. Your job is to steer them into seeing the value and feeling the value. All right, Greg, thank you for throwing that, getting me down that street. I just want to read the rest of his stuff. He said something about machine time, training time, learning to run it, the cost of software, training time to learn software. Your training time is your cost. That's building your skill to give you the talent to demand a lot of money. And you are worth the money. That's the other thing. You have to feel within you that you are worth the money. I might have said it before. If you're going to charge $10 an hour, then go work at a convenience store, right? You're worth more than that. Taking all the miscellaneous things into account, the software costs, the machine time, the tooling costs, the tooling wear, tooling replacements, on and on. In the beginning, don't worry about that. Just set an hourly value that's worth you. And don't be cheap on yourself. All right, so only Chevys. Hey, man, what's going on? It seems to be very difficult from one location to another as far as prices. So that was said earlier. Demographics, location, geographics. He said, what do you think and how can we pick the right things for the biggest crowd around us? So this is a big one. The rest of his question is he's in a retirement community, but has done more for other businesses. He's not retired, but wish he could. Yeah, doesn't everybody. Thanks for your videos. Because he sucks bad at sales. Okay. Chevy, you don't suck. I like talking to you. How can you pick the right things for the biggest crowd? This is a good question. Because good sales isn't always about the big crowd. We're thinking quantity instead of quality. One of the things in marketing is they say the money is in the list, and I absolutely agree with them. Now, the list is the repeat customer. When you have a customer, you don't want to forget that customer, and you don't want to let that customer forget you. Here's a slogan that I like. If you would probably want to write this down. I'm not here to sell you. I am here to make you never forget who I am. What that means is I'm here to solve your problem at a level that you never ever expected. And you're going to want to pay me money for it. And in the end, you're going to say thank you. That's the true closer, right? I use the term closer, not a salesperson. This is the psychology that you want to get to. When you get a customer to that level and they're saying thank you, then they remember you. And then you make sure that they know that you're still out there, that you still want to serve them. This is the other thing. You have to want to serve them. Give them a little bit more than they ever expected. And the more you give, the more they come back. So it's not necessarily the biggest crowd that you want. It's the crowd that's willing to pay you what you're worth, understand your craft, and understand that you are creating something. And that is willing to spend the money. Don't go to the Walmart crowd. That's the big crowd. Go to the crowd that's in your niche. That's why I always talk about niches. And again, I'll remind you, that's why I will coach you as a business coach to help you find your niche by diving into you and what your passions are. And then we would work together to look at your niche and see what angles you can come in at. So, Chevy, you suck at sales? Because we all suck at sales when we think of it as a sale. When we think of it as a dollar sign, that the end game is money. In business, the end game is money. But money is the reward for delivering an emotionally satisfying product to somebody. So sales is really about relationship. Being friends with somebody, having interest in them. And the more they feel connected to you, the more they want to buy from you. So, Chevy, don't think of it as sales. Think of it as relationships and building quality relationships with people. And if you can come into that perspective, and that the person on the other end is a person just like you that wants to be valued, wants to succeed as much as you do, then, and you're connected with that desire within them, then you got it. The thing to remember is your customer doesn't care about you. They care about the emotional satisfaction that they're going to get for the end result of the product. And so if you can care about that as much or more than they do, where they feel that caring about it, you've got the sale. You've got it closed. So yeah, get the word sales out of your mind and get the word relationship in your mind. Closing. Dan. Okay, so Dan, he owns a CNC machine as well, and I want to know how to charge per project. I know it will depend on what material I'm using, MDF versus pine. He installed a transformer. Oh boy, you're getting into the big dogs. So when you are starting to invest heavily in your equipment, and you are planning to make money off of that, you want to get yourself to a point where you're recovering that cost. You're going to have to wrap that cost into projects over a period of time. ROI, right? The return on investment. So a transformer is a durable good. It's a tax deduction and a depreciable item if you've got a business, like a legitimate LLC or something. There's going to be tax, you probably already know, it's got depreciation in it. That's going to be stretched over a period of 5 years, I think. It depends on how deep you're into this and the quality of the projects that you have and how much you're pumping out. If you're side hustling, you know, it's going to take a little bit longer to get the return on investment for that equipment. If you're in it full time, it's going to recover pretty quickly because you're going to wrap that in there. But you just have to remember it's got to be spread out over a period of time. And if your transformer costs $5,000 or $10,000, it's going to take a year or two to recover that in the profit returns or the pre-profit. the net returns, right? No, not net. You know what I mean. All right, so, phew, that's a good one. Be patient with that one. In this case, Dan, what you want is to make sure you're in a niche, that you are making products that are worthy of your machine. If you've got a $12,000 machine and you've got a $5,000 transformer in there, work on getting your market into that area where people are willing to pay more money for it. Specialized, big signs, things like that. All right, unsuccessful bank robber. How to make people realize that an expensive CNC product is worth their money. This goes back to number one, is you can't make people realize. They have to realize it themselves. You trying to convince somebody automatically sets somebody up to be defensive or not so open. This is why you have to go into the question asking stage. Instead of trying to convince them, they want a product and they say, wow, it's expensive. Ask them, so what do you think that goes into actually creating this? Well, I don't know. When they start to answer that question, then they start to realize it themselves. If you are convincing them, then again, they're going to push away. The thing is when you're trying to convince somebody, you're projecting something out to them, and they're receiving that energy. So when you're trying to convince them, you're showing a certain insecurity in yourself that maybe my stuff isn't worth what they think it is. Basically, if they can't see it themselves, then you're in the wrong demographic. Get into the mental space within yourself and the self-image that you don't have to justify. You can walk away from the deal without shaking or batting an eye and go find the next person who's willing to recognize that and honor that. Roberto, should I charge for CNC hours? Absolutely. Do we charge differently for an object, a wood cross of the Jesus, over a wood frame with letters? Now, the thing to remember is this is all relative to the buyer. What a person wants matters to them. And so if you have a frame made of letters and you've made it unique, you've personalized it, which I'll dive into in just a moment, then it's got an inherent value in it because it's so personalized to them. So that emotional value has a dollar figure attached to it. In the end, I got to stop because get this in your head. A sale is never about money. The end result is what the sale is about. The emotional satisfaction. Money is like the top level. That's why you need to ask questions to get underneath it. And then you can charge differently. Yes, you get an idea in your mind of what these things cost. Then you have kind of a baseline thing. The charge really, it depends on the time you put into it. It depends on the materials you put into it. When you're talking about things like a wood cross of the Jesus, now the niche is religion. And there are a lot of wood crosses out there with Jesus on it. So a person can go buy it. It's almost a cookie cutter item. Your job as a marketer is to get it personalized to an individual. So the one thing I want to stress here, I believe I've said it before, don't think that what you think is a marketable item is a marketable item. The market will tell you whether it's an item they want or not. He says, how do you determine your prices? I've talked a bit about that. Would you charge a project as a whole? Meaning, will you become faster in time programming and designing? So when you have a concept and a base design, okay, this is a good time to get into this. All right. Once you get into a product where you can make kind of a baseline product and repeat making it without any design time, and then you just add features to it, now you're building it into a profitability. And yes, hold your prices, because it still has an inherent value in it. So I'm going to talk about this emotional value thing. I'm going to get back to it because this is so key to understand when you are trying to sell products. You want to get out of the money idea of what can I get out of it and get more into what can I give them that they're willing to give to me what I want to get out of it. So let's go into a really good item that you can cookie cutter create and then personalize at multiple different emotional levels. So I'm just going to walk into this. I'm in the United States. I don't know about what country you're in, but here flags are a big deal, the American flag. And flags are a symbol of patriotism. So I'm sure every country has that. So that in and of itself has an emotional value to people. So when you make flags, which is a hot item, by the way, you may want to research that market. On the flag, you have the emotional level of the flag, and then you add another emotional level on top of that by adding on that an engraving of a brotherhood or sisterhood symbol, a military symbol, police, fire, some kind of symbol, right? So now you've got two layers of emotional value. That increases the dollar value of it automatically in their mind because they're much more bonded to it. But then when you add a third level, the name of the person, now it's the expression of patriotism, the passion of the brotherhood, and I, Garrett, my name being plastered on this thing, is the one who has that. So that's a third level of emotion. Personalization is everything. Now, you can get even to a fourth level. If you can put a date on there. So you've got somebody who did the service for whatever number of years. You can put the dates that they did it. My phone decided to try to talk to me. Now you have four values, right? Four levels of emotional values. The flag, patriotism, the brotherhood, the military, the person who served in it, and the date that they served. It says so much. And this kind of thing it amps up the value because it's so personalized. Okay. We are still on Roberto's stuff. He said, when do you know when you are not wasting your time and money, or how to determine that? When you know that you're wasting your time and money. That's when you know. And that's when you stop. That's when you draw lines. If you know up front that you've got a project that someone wants you to make, and you know you can't do it for a profit, then tell them you can't do it and explain to them why. And if they're not willing to do it, walk away from the deal. It's not important enough to them to have it. This goes back to Chevy's question, right? That was Chevy, unsuccessful bank robber. You can't convince somebody that doesn't have it within them that your stuff is worth it. So be able to walk away. It says Roberto says he has woodworker friends that want him to do drawer fronts and stuff like that, and outsource work. Is it worth it? Absolutely. As long as you can make a profit. Here's the ideas that I have. They want drawer fronts. They have to give you dimensions of whatever their finished product is. So most of the design work is done. You just have to figure out how to get it to run on your machine, and then you're plugging out however many they want. And I'm going to assume that they are going to do the finish work, right? So you don't have to have finish time in it. So now you've got general design time, you've got your machine time, you double it, the material cost if you are buying the material, and just double it, triple it. Make it worth your time to do it, or work with them. They have a cap because they have to make a profit as well. So yeah, if you can get to be like an outsourced person, that's actually a nice place to be because you don't have to worry about the fine details at the end. I prefer that type of environment. Let them do the finish work. Because if you goof up on the finish, it's on you. But if they goof up on the finish, it's on them. All right, Ken asked me 3D cuts. What kind? If there's 3D cuts that take 8 to 10 hours. Well, two things: either figure out how to make it take less time, but really, if you are doing a job that's taking that much time, you've got to charge for that time. Otherwise, you just say no, because now you're starting to eat up some electricity too. You've got to compensate for that. Charge for that amount of time. The other thing is, if you have other jobs on a plate and you can't run those jobs because of that, that's why you have to charge for that time. All right, and then yeah, so we got one more, the humorous one. Before we get to this one, which you'll want to hear, if you are new to CNC or want to make money with the CNC, you may want to subscribe to this channel. I dive deep into this stuff, and join the CNC Entrepreneurs Facebook group. Watch for my videos that teach you all things CNC for the beginner. And there's a whole bunch of links down below to help you on your way. I sell router bit sets for the CNC router beginners. And I think that's about it. Subscribe and give me a like. All right, so let's get to Mark. Mark, this was the one I kind of giggled at. So Mark said, is this legal? Is there any attorneys in the group? And I asked Mark, what do you mean? He said, well, this looks like price fixing. And I assured Mark that this is far from price fixing in the CNC world. Anyway, I thought you might get a little kick out of that. Again, if this is helpful, thumbs up, and I'm so glad you were here. And keep the questions coming. I am more than happy to answer them. And I've got lots of videos to shoot. I just want you to see you see that piece of paper right there? That is completely full of videos that I need to shoot because of you asking me to shoot a video on something. This is Garrett. Hope you have a better understanding of how to price your projects for CNC work. I will talk to you next time.